Hi guys, and welcome to this quick demo video showing the new painting features of 3D Coat 4.5 using the PBR system with the smart materials and the new painting conditions. To make this video I will use the default robot mesh that comes with the software. Not this one, this is just a test I made before recording the video to test the speed and my English, so I will simply select a new file, paint UV matte mesh and double click on this robot icon. Of course, if I want to load another mesh, I have to select this folder icon, browse through my hard drive, and upon import, 3D Coat will make a dialog box pop up, appear asking me which type of resolution I want for my textures and all some other stuff. But right now I really don't need it because I simply have to double click on this robot mesh. It takes some time and that's it. So it's loaded, and as you can see it loads with some maps already baked. We have a normal map. We have also an ambient occlusion and a cavity mask. Here it's called cavity, but it's curvature map. And of course you can bake your own ambient occlusion maps and curvature maps inside of 3D Coat also for your own models, and I will show you in a second. I will show only making the curvature, so I will get rid of this just because the ambient occlusion takes some more time. All you have to do is go here under textures and use this calculate occlusion and calculate curvature commands. The calculate occlusion will give you the possibility to set some options like the number of rays, the post smoothing steps, whereas the curvature makes all automated, and once done you will see that it will create a new layer that will be put in invisible mode because it will only serve the purpose of driving the painting conditions for our smart materials. So after doing this, all I have to do is create a new layer and start painting. So I want to first of all create my base metal. This is a robot, so it makes sense to use metal as a base. And I want to select my paint bucket tool, and let me be sure that I deselect the use color tolerance. Because when set in this way, without the use color tolerance, I have the possibility to use this tool to fill entire shells. Okay, so as soon as I select one of these painting tools, this smart material preview window appears, showing me the result of the operation on my mesh. So in this case I have nothing selected, so it will paint with this red color with the roughness value of 0 and the metalness of 0, and this will be the result that will happen using this tool. So now I can select one smart material, so I will select this one, and you can see that the smart material preview will show me the result of the filling effect using this paint bucket set with the particular conditions and on the particular layer. With this I mean that if you take a look here in the top, not here, I have set this paint bucket to work painting in multi-channel mode, the albedo, the roughness and metalness, and also the depth information, so the bump map. If, for example, I don't want to put any bump information, deselecting this, you can see that the smart material preview changes because it will only show me the effect that I will obtain using this particular tool set in this way. More than this, another cool fact is that it also takes into account the blending mode of the layer and the opacity set for the different channels. So, for example, if I want to set this depth opacity not to 100%, but let's say to 5%, it will show me the result of the bump applied with this weaker opacity. And this is a cool way, if you organize your work to create different layers for different materials, it's a cool way to use these opacity sliders to fine-tune the effects if you realize that they are way too strong or there is something that doesn't work quite well, without the need to refill your object with the material after changing the material. So before applying this material, I want you to notice that let me change for a second the positioning of the environment map, so it will also change the lighting. Okay. Also let's notice that the most of these materials contain in their definition some maps that will drive these effects and create those fine patterns. If I hover on top of this, the preview will disappear, so bear with me. Of course, you have the possibility to change the positioning, the scaling, and the rotation of these patterns. You have three ways for doing this. The first is to use this top bar, that is the material navigator, and with those icons you can of course move the pattern, rotate, and scale up and down, and also perform a non-uniform scale. The second way is right click on this little yellow dot. It will expand this gizmo, and now you have the possibility of course again to move, rotate, and scale. The third option is not active by default and uses some navigation shortcuts via the right mouse button. By clicking outside of the model with the right mouse button, you can move the pattern. With shift and right mouse button clicking, you can scale down or up, and with control and right clicking, you can rotate this pattern. If you want to activate this navigation shortcut, you have to go here under Edit, Preferences, and under Viewport, be sure that you have this Allow Material Navigation via left mouse button, etc., checked on. Okay, so we have done. I really like this base metal. It's a bit dirty, but it's cool. So all I have to do, instead of using the paint bucket, I can right click on this material, smart material icon, and select this fill or layer. It will take some time, and that's it. Of course, you can spot some differences in resolution between the preview and the fill, and it's just because the preview is not resolution dependent, so it will not take into account the resolution of your texture, whereas when you fill, the resulting effect, of course, and the crispness of this effect will be driven by the texture resolution, and if in certain areas you end up having UV distortion, you will notice some artifacts. Okay, so now let's create a new layer and call this paint, and I want to start changing some of these materials also to show the option that you have to modify those materials. For the paint, I want to start using this, not this particular one because I have changed something in the material definition. So first of all, I want to right click this and select this restore factory defaults. Okay, just to be sure to start clean. Okay, so you can see that by default this particular paint material is more like plastic, is very glossy, and I really don't like it. So to change this, I will open up this smart material editor, and here we can spot the real nature of a smart material is just a collection of layers stacked one on top of the other, in which you can define different textures and values for your channels, so color, depth, roughness, metalness, etc. And you can also set some painting condition, driven also in this case by optionally by some masking textures. You can perform some edge scattering and so on. And you can of course change the opacity of the layers. Okay, so you can see that this material is pretty simple. We have two layers, one that is white on top of the base, and here is set to paint more on the convex areas, so it will give this whitening effect on the edges. Whereas here we have the base color, which we have set flat color as a base, no real texture. The only texture that is present is associated with the roughness, and is a pattern of a noise. If I hover on top of this text field, I can have a preview of this texture, and if I click here on the side, I can change the levels by changing this curve for this image. Now, from my research, I've seen that those two values, I have of course the possibility to associate the texture, but I also have this slider for my roughness. And this acts as some sort of multiplier for this, meaning that if I have this set to 0, no matter how the picture is, it will always be painted as black. So if you want to use, this is some sort of, you have to consider that this value multiplies on top of this. So 0 is black, black multiplied on top of another image equals always black. So this is as some sort of darkening effect. So if I really want to use only the image as the image input as to drive the value of my roughness, I have to put this up to 100. And as soon as I make this, you can see that something changes. The roughness becomes more flat, less glossy, and if I change now here the values, I can, let's say, clamp this towards the black, and in theory it should become more shiny. Yeah, you can see that now it's more shiny. Well, okay, something was not working. I had to pause for a second the video, so let me just explain. Let's go back to smooth shade. Okay, now the problem is if I have this texture set to invert, it somewhat doesn't work like it's supposed to be, because this ceases to multiply, but in some way it works like a screen effect. So if you really want to use this image, the values of this image, to drive the effect, you have to put the invert off and change this curve, and now you can see that it should work like it's supposed to be. So if I set this to a value very close to black, it will be shiny. If I set this to values very close to white, it will be more flat. Then, and if you want to see the real effect of this applied to the roughness, you can always go here under View, Gloss, Roughness Only, and perform a fill effect, and you can see that now we are filling with the texture like we have set. If you reset this curve, done, and I repeat the fill function, you can see that this is the effective texture. Okay, so let me undo a couple of times by looking at the full shading model. Okay, and I want to underline this because it is somewhat confusing, this mix of the value with the texture, so sometimes you are not obtaining the results that you expect. So now I can really perform this clamping. I really want this not to be shiny, so something like this, and maybe let me change with the contrast just to have yes, some variation. Okay, and that's it. I can save this. I really have not don't need to fear to change this material, because as you saw before, I can always have the possibility to reset this to the default factory value. Before proceeding, I also want to change this painting condition. Right now it's set to always. That means that it will paint all the mesh parts without any different condition, but as this one is set to paint more on the convex areas, I want this to act less on the convex areas. So there will be some sort of whitening effect together with some chipping of the metal parts that are more exposed. Let me change a bit the degree, just make this not too strong, really subtle. And with this overall cavity modulator, I can make the effect stronger or weaker on a global basis. So this degree slider will have more effect. Now I can save, and with this setup, I can simply start clicking on some of those parts. Let me for a second close this Smart Material Preview and paint with this material all the different parts that I want to be painted. So I can always change the position of my light, and I can also change the position and the scale of this pattern. This is only driving the roughness, but you can see that here it will appear this sort of variation that is really subtle, and it's very nice. Okay, and here and here, maybe also here. Let's paint all the joints. and also this one. And that's it. Now let's create another layer and we'll put some rust here, not using the default smart material, but creating one of our own. And for this I have already set one. I want to start with this, opening up the smart material editor, but I will delete all the images and start from scratch. I'm only using this just to be sure that I don't forget anything, so it's just some sort of self-reminder. So let's put back the color to white. This is the setup that you have with this to 0 when you create a new material. So I will click to select first of all my color texture, okay, and expand my smart material preview, and this is the effect of the color applied. This is texture of some rust. It's stylable, so it's very funny, and I hope you can see that by default those textures are applied using cubic mapping. Is what is called in other softwares like triplanar projection, and it allows to create this impression of seamless patterns that wrap around all the model. You have the possibility to change the mapping method. You can project from the camera, you can use the UV mapping, but those will show some artifacts and seams. So the better way to create those general overall patterns is the cubic mapping. Okay, another cool thing is that let's say that I have this rust image. I feel that it is too orangish for my taste, so I want more reddish rust like iron, so I can use this color to modulate the texture, so I can make this more red or darker, like so. The more the saturation, the more it will wipe the color information of the image, of course. So let's put somewhat mid value in the saturation, and now it looks like really iron rust. Okay, I really like it. For the depth, I want to select the same texture. It will take into account the luminosity value of the image. Even if it's color image, it will work. Otherwise, I could use some other software, like for example bitmap to material, or undo, sorry, to extract from the picture some depth information, some bump map. For the depth, I want to set a very low value. 2% is enough, because I really don't want this bump to be so strong, but to give the impression, of course, that it's some sort of irregular bump. And then for the roughness, again, the same image. Of course, it will take into account again the luminance value. I can click this and I will change this to be clamped towards the white values. I don't want to use the full range, otherwise it will have some areas that looks really shiny, and the rust is never so shiny. And I can also apply a procedural noise. I don't know if you can see the difference. It will add some sort of additional variation, and I can also change the modulation type. With modulate 2 times, additive or distort. Distort will warp the image, whereas this is some sort of overlay, a stronger overlay, or an additive mode, so it will only lighten the image. But modulate is enough. I really don't have the need to change this, just to add some more variation. So it's done. And for the roughness, again, I want to use the full image, so I will put this at 100%. And notice also here we have those 2 icons, and they tell how those values will have to work on the layer, if the layer has already some sort of information regarding this channel. So I can decide to replace the information already present, or modulate it, so it will mix with the already existing information on this layer, but usually you always want to use this by replacing the information if present. Okay, so for the metalness of 0 is okay, because I really don't want this to be metallic. And last, I want to set some painting condition, and I want to this rust act more on the curved areas. There is this bug: when I change the painting condition, the window moves. So with the overall cavity modulator, I can make this effect wider on a global basis, and now with the degree I can change the degree, let's say really subtle, Okay, so you can see that with this moron curve I have both the concave and convex areas exposed to this rust effect. Last, I want to add some sort of edge scattering. Before doing this, I have to select an image, but in this case I will only use the procedural noise. You can see that I have set the curve to make this image with a high contrast, and this serves the purpose of having these borders really sharp. With edge scattering I can add some sort of islands that go outside of my curvature, and will give the impression, will add this sort of randomness to my pattern. Let me change maybe the noise scale, make this smaller. Okay, like this. It's some sort of warping effect, and it's cool. Well, maybe it's way too small, so again put this higher and change a bit the edge scattering to make this more subtle, like this. Okay, last I could also add some sort of masking texture that will mask all the effect based on some noise or texture. So this could also act as a multiplier to switch off some areas, also on the cavities and convexities. Okay, yeah, and I can also raise the contrast or lower it down, make this really contrasted. Once done this, I can save. Yep, I can close the smart material preview, and I will start to fill with the fill bucket tool all the areas that I want to be rusted. It's some sort of unreal, the fact that there is more rust here in the painted areas, because usually metal paints have this sort of antioxidant substances to avoid the oxidation, but that's okay, it's cool. And of course I'm painting also on the bare metal areas, and of course I can change the positioning, because let's say that I realize that I want, let me undo for a second, that I want this, open up the smart material preview. Okay, I've got this island set in this way. Okay, very cool. I want this to be larger, so I can extend this by moving in some way. Okay, and then paint again. And so you can see the result. It will add this painting to the already painted area, and will make a very cool effect, like so. Okay, here, I'm going real quick. Also here, let me change and find a spot, okay, in which I have a nice pattern. Perfect. Now let's create a new layer and add some leaking effect, because there is no PBR asset that has not some leaking. So I will select these leaks. There is this bug that, as there are only two materials, sometimes when I click they don't show, so I have to go back to another one and click again. And I will use this, but before I want to restore the factory defaults, because I've changed this. So let me see the smart material preview, select this one, and right now it looks like alien vomit or something similar. I really want to change this, so let me open up the smart material preview. First of all, I want to get rid of this very saturated color, make some sort of more oily color, so darker in the green, not so saturated, and that's okay. Then I want to get rid of the depth, because I really want to look like a very thin sheet of liquid. And I also want to change the blending mode of this layer to overlay, because I want this oil to somewhat add to the pre-existing color, and that's cool. You can see that the effect is very nice. Notice that this particular material the painting condition set to more on top, so it takes into account the position given by the wall space normal map to fill more the areas that are flat on the top, because it makes sense. If we have some leaking, they will accumulate more on those top areas. And there is this leaking texture that will create those streaks effect. So I can save this. Bam. Let me close the preview, and I can of course in every moment move this to have a preview of how the streaks will flow. And if I realize that here, for example, they are too diagonal, I can control and rotate this. Okay, to try to make those straight, maybe in this way, yeah. And then bam, I'm gonna fill with my paint bucket. Of course here is looking downwards, so the more on top condition is somewhat avoiding me to paint this. So I can go into the smart material editor and maybe change with the smart material preview open up. I can change this degree. Okay, something. Oh yeah, strange. I have to raise this up. Okay, and for yeah, we have this edge scattering. So like so, yeah, could be nice. And I can continue painting without closing this really. So let's put this here, and now we have a problem. If you can see, the cubic mapping will create this sort of different flow of the streaks. Here we have those flowing in this way, here in this way, and this is something that sometimes we really don't want to work around this. I can simply select this paint tool. Okay, so I will now rotate to make here those streaks like I want. I can paint them here, then I can move and I can rotate again, and now here it works like I would like to work, and I can paint. So I can decide also to use this painting tool to paint in certain areas instead of entire shells. Now I want to change again the degree. I feel that it's way too strong, so okay, and paint here and there. Oh, here it's very nice. Okay, make this straighter. Wow, really love it. And paint also here on the bare metal. Very nice. Last, I will create a new layer, and I will use this dirt material. I have to first of all close this to change the material. This one. Okay, so smart material editor. It's composed of two different layers, a brighter one and a darker one, that all together create this sort of heavy dirt effect. I really love this one, but of course probably I've changed something, and as you can see it's set to paint more on the shadowed areas, so the ones that are more occluded. I want first of all to change a bit the degree and lower this down to make this effect less strong, way less strong. Okay, and so can save this, and I could right click and paint and fill the layer, or if I want to fill only certain parts, I can change this stroke type of the paint bucket, deselecting these ignore back faces and just drag a selection on the part that I want to fill. It will take some time. Please don't die. Okay, and I fill this. I can fill this. Of course I will have to refine and also paint in these transition areas, and I'm using this approach because for the entire model I want to use this painting condition, except for this part I could also use some sort of freezing and option to tell not to paint in this. But for this one I want to go here and raise a bit the degree and make this really dirty. Probably on the face it will have more dirt accumulating because it fights against some enemy, and so it will be more exposed to the battle damage and battle dirt. Oh, now the smart material preview doesn't work. Okay, doesn't move. I can always change the position of this pattern to add some more dust here, and I can also click again to make this effect stronger. You can see that it's some sort of adding effect, because the mask is not pure white or pure black, so every time I click I can make this more dirty. Now I will undo a couple of times because I feel that it's way too dirty. Perfect. And last I will go with my paint bucket tool, smart material preview, expand this, and I want to create a new layer, and I want to close this, and I want to use this red color with a roughness of 0 and metalness of 0. Maybe raise a bit up the roughness, not that much, but maybe yeah. Yeah, I want this to be metal color because it gives more the impression of being some sort of glass, because now I want to fill this. Maybe raise down the roughness. Okay, yeah, like mirror glass, and for those two areas, so it will look like some sort of strange lens, eye lens. Also, now this one, but already this one. Okay, and that's it. It's very cool. Let me close this smart material preview. Last, let's say that we want to change on the fly the paint, because we realize that with this type of rust and this type of dust, the colors tend to be a bit confusing. Maybe it could be cooler if we have some sort of not warm tint, so a cool tint. So I can take this paint layer, and another cool feature of 3D Coat, you can spot that it's telling me that it's gonna use the autosave in short time. And I can go here into textures, adjust, use saturation lightness, and I know that a hue switch of 180 will turn my red into cyan. I could also change the saturation and the lightness, but I'm okay with this, so I will go with OK, and it will apply this change, and now we have a cyan robot with this nice red eye and rust effect that really shows and shines. Not shines because it's not shiny, but it really shows up through the paint. So I really hope you enjoyed this. 3D Coat 4.5 is really a little gem, so go and grab it and have fun with it. Bye!